Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead. I'm Ken Jacobs, but you know that. And Taking the Lead is where I get the joy of speaking with communications, PR, internal comms leaders, strategic comms leaders. But we don't mostly talk about comms. We talk about leadership. Sometimes we interview people we know. Sometimes we interview clients, sometimes friends, sometimes people we don't know. Today, we're interviewing a client with whom we have really become great friends. And I am so thrilled to introduce you to her. She is the Executive VP for RF Engage, Ruderfin's Global Center of Excellence for Strategic Internal Comms. And I'm going to pronounce her name correctly after mispronouncing it for 2 years. Trish Nicolas. I'm going to think of Bricola, but with an N. Trish Nicolas, welcome to Taking the Lead.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it so much. I think we almost crossed paths at Ogilvy PR back in the 90s. And I'm really thankful that we finally met last year, some 30 years
Yeah,
later. And I
that
know we probably exactly the same as we did in the 90s, right?
that might have happened. I will tell everyone we had our first LinkedIn, and it was just that we just something connected, something happened. We realized we saw so much the same way. And my really bad Humphrey Bogart imitation, it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Was that Humphrey Bogart? I think so. It was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, a bad imitation. All right, that's not why they're here. They're here to hear your wisdom. So we're going to jump in on questions. I didn't even give your whole bio, but you were executive director of PR for Wellstar Health Corp. You've been a CMO, you've been a founder, you've been a partner at great agency Jackson Spalding, and you mentioned Ogilvy. So now they all know, wow, we need to listen. We're going to get some wisdom from this wonderful woman. So to that point, you've led at corporations, large agencies, small agencies, and now what is called a center of excellence of a large agency, regardless of size, location, all of that. What are the most critical leadership rules that have helped you as a leader, regardless of location or size?
That's a great question. I'm a big Pirates of the Caribbean fan, and I think other fans will appreciate these are more guidelines than rules. But I'd say that listen, learn, and lead are a part of my leader's code. And listen. My father told me when I was taking my first job, he said, "Be like a sponge and listen before you provide input." And that really stuck with me throughout my life and career. And I think often as experienced leaders can, there's often an expectation for us to speak first, and sometimes it's hard not to, but really listening to our audiences and our peers and teams and the world around us can provide us with vital perspective as leaders. Second, learn, whether, no matter where we are in our careers, whether it's 3 days or 30 plus years, we should always be learning from each other and from our peers and from the industry and, from successes and failures that we make and that others do too. And when we're learning, we're growing. And the third is lead. And while it might seem counterintuitive to say, lead as a leadership role, but what I've observed over the years is that really the strongest leaders are both resilient and relentless. And that means leading through challenges and crises, good times and bad, taking feedback and failure in stride, and just moving forward, maybe when others can't.
Yeah, great insights. Agree. And my take on that is, it's not leaderships and successes. It's not leaderships. My God, it's not successes and failures. Hey, folks, this is one take Zoom. It's not successes and failures. It's successes and learnings. And a new one I heard is it's successes and experiments. And I think to be a great leader, there's no such thing as failure. And I think we need to do that ourselves if we want to lead people into taking educated risks. We've got to do it ourselves. So, speaking of failures or learnings or experiments, please be honest. What was your worst leadership stumble? How did you recover? And what did you learn?
So it's not really one instance that comes to mind, Ken.
There's
It's
so
probably a
many.
whole
Are there so
career's worth
many?
of them, right? 35 years. And, I think as leaders, like you said, we should expect to make mistakes and embrace them. And so, stumble all the time and learn and grow from every stumble. And you said, you don't really, don't think about it as failure. But, John Maxwell said, fail early and fail often, but always fail forward. So two areas that I'm really, continue to stumble and seek balance in. One is challenging versus supporting team members. And, people that have worked with me over the years know that I hold my teams to a very high standard and myself to a very, very high standard because I just want everybody to step into their full potential. But I've learned that not everyone grows through challenge, and some people grow better through support, and that's okay. And as leaders, I think we have to learn to meet people where they're at and adopt our style to help them grow in the way that's best for them. And that's something that I continue to work on as a leader every day. And the other one is vulnerability versus leadership behavior. And your followers may have read Brene Brown's Dare to Lead about vulnerability at work. I also read a book by Paulette Ashland, and it's called Leading the Way and the Behaviors that Drive Success. And sometimes struggle with striking the right balance between transparency that shows how rawly human I am and the leadership behaviors and executive voice that engender confidence. And that can change, based on the scenario and the people. So finding the right balance at the right moments is really a part of growing as a leader. And I know I stumble every day at this, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Maxwell Brown. Am I getting no, Maxwell?
John Maxwell.
John Maxwell. John C. Maxwell.
Yep.
And one quote that I think is so important. As leaders, we always talk about vision, and we should. But one of my favorite John C. Maxwell quotes is, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision.
Yeah.
So you've got to be the kind of leader, and it can take work, that people buy into, because they really do have a choice to follow you or not. So no surprise, we admire the same leadership experts.
Yeah.
I think if we look at 2023 going into 2024, I think it would be hard to disagree that these might be uncertain times in our industry. I don't like to view them as challenging, but I think uncertainty is okay. What do you believe are the most important things leaders must do to lead their teams, their followers, even their peers through uncertainty?
Yeah, and Ken, I'd say not just in our industry, but in the world.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, you talk a lot about, energy and becoming masters of our own.
You've heard me talk about that, eh?
A lot, a lot.
Just a
Yeah.
tad, just a bit.
Yeah, it's taken a while to stick, but that becoming masters of our own energy in times of uncertainty, it's not always easy. But it's something, like you said, we have to work on. But the impact, leading through uncertainty, but the impact of having that positive energy and bringing, energy to the conversation and to the table can make a huge difference with the people around us. So I want to thank you for reminding us all frequently, of the power of positive energy. But there are just a few other things that I'd add to that. One is leading through uncertainty is communicate with honesty, support with empathy, listen actively, and be the calm in the chaos as best you can.
I think absolutely great counsel. Great counsel. So, leadership, I always say, is not for the faint of heart, right? It's challenging and rewarding and all these things, but you got to have some courage. So, did you ever have a moment of self-doubt, or your worst moment of self-doubt? And how'd you get through it?
About 10 minutes ago.
Oh boy. Well, timing is like comedy. Timing is, as Steve Cody would say.
Steve Cody would say, yeah.
Comedy, timing is everything.
Absolutely. I think it's like you asked about, the biggest stumble, like the worst stumble. It's the same kind of thing, like the moment of self-doubt. It's every day. being a leader, a strong leader, I think means questioning yourself on a regular basis. Am I doing the right thing for my organization? Is there a better path forward? What are the options for this situation? What are the ramifications of this decision over that decision? And I think, regularly questioning our decisions and our thought processes is really human, but it also helps to ensure that we're thinking and acting strategically, and leading well. And confidence, can be reassuring to the people around us, but if we get too confident, we're more inclined to misstep and maybe, miss an opportunity to learn and grow as leaders. And we have to open ourselves up to self-doubt and even the doubt of others, which can be really, really hard. That balance of confidence and vulnerability is vital to our effectiveness as leaders.
So it's interesting you say that, because I think we can be vulnerable with our people
Mhm.
while still being confident. And I
Right.
think that, having that mirror and looking within, and how do I don't believe in looking back much. How can I do better next time as a leader, especially if I didn't get the behavior or action or work product of the person who's reporting to me? So very big on looking within. At the same time, I would reinforce that
Mhm.
people choose to follow confident leaders. And so reminding ourselves, I've come to this position in leadership, not title, not fancy office or
Right.
salary, but I've come to this moment, this calling of leadership for a reason, and I've earned it, and there are expectations. And if I'm confident, people will follow me, and I can help them get through uncertainty. So
Yep.
I think it's all that. So
And that's why I said it's a balance, right?
yes, yes,
It's a balance
absolutely.
between you've got to have that confidence, you've got to have that, but also, the right dose of vulnerability and the right dose
Yeah.
of questioning ourselves. Not to say that we're not, capable or leading, but questioning ourselves is going to help us just to be
Yeah.
stronger.
And I think the best leaders, there's a big dose of humility.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the great leaders in the world, and in our industry and beyond, almost everyone, who, met with like Harold Burson or someone, would say this amazing, iconic leader and so humble. And I think Warren Buffett might be an example of that,
Yeah.
in the non-PR world. There is a non-PR world. And, but I think one can be confident and humble. And again, I think that's something people follow. So I can't believe we're wrapping it up already. You're the fourth leader we featured from Ruderfin RF. We had Kathy Bloomgarden, the CEO. We've had Steve Cody and Clayton Fletcher from Peppercom. Steve's the founder. Clayton's the chief comedy officer. Speaking of Steve, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, this is blue. It is not a black, and it's not a turtleneck. It's a mock turtleneck. We'll just put that out there. Um, but you've recently launched RF Engage, the agency's global center of excellence for strategic internal communications. So, what are the three most important things that leaders in internal comms must know or do to succeed in an era of employee disengagement and frightening low levels of employee happiness?
Yep, it's a big moment now, and really has been, exacerbated over the course of the pandemic. We've been talking a lot, Ken, as you know, with our clients and speaking at conferences about the top trends that communications leaders need to know and navigate in this moment. And the top three are, and again, this sounds like it's the same answer to the question that you asked, but you need to prioritize strategic internal communications. Um, there was a chief communications officer survey that came out, I think, this summer from Korn Ferry, and it underscored that your internal audiences are viewed as the CCO's most important audience. And Gallup, like you indicated, shows from the Global State of the Workplace report came out showing that 77% of the global workforce is disengaged. So it's an imperative that we apply the resources to get internal communications right. And it shouldn't be a checklist of recycled tactics. especially when workforces are feeling the weight of the world, and often doing more with less. So I would say strategic internal communications, and hopefully that gave it a little taste of what the difference is. Number two, I think, is really supporting people managers, especially middle management. We know that 89% of middle managers are experiencing burnout, and that's a cry for help. They're being asked to handle a lot, from being experts at their function, but also being leaders, being great communicators. And I just read in Harvard Business Review, the current issue, that they're now being asked to be mental health first responders as well. So that's just a lot to carry. So, and we can't really depend on the cascades anymore to get information to them. We've got to go directly to those people managers in partnership with HR and their functional leadership to support them. And then the last one is streamline, streamline, streamline. Did you know, Ken, that humans now have the attention span that is less than a goldfish's?
Wait, were you saying something?
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, a goldfish has an
I want
attention.
to know who measured the goldfish's
I
attention.
know, right? Well, that would be an
That's an
interesting job.
experiment. I want to know more about.
Need a lot of caffeine for that one. But goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. Human attention span is now 8 seconds. It's declined by like 12 minutes over the past decade. And 43% of employee communications aren't even seen. They're buried due to the volume of information. So it seems maybe counterintuitive for a communications agency that produces content and does communications to say you need to do less. But we need to do less. I mean, it's vital for achieving resonance. We've got to be really mindful about it. Our audiences are saturated and they're tuning out. And so we have to be really active stewards of that audience experience. And that means mitigating the output and focusing more on the outcomes. So my three things.
Excellent, excellent.
People managers, streamline, 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 and internal communications reporting.
Apologies if I cut you off there. So we're going to wrap. If you are out there and interested in how your organization can communicate more effectively with strategic internal comms, please reach out to Trish. And by the way, it's TrishNicolas on LinkedIn. You can find her there. And of course, if you're interested in dialing up your leadership presence, if you're having leadership challenges, if you want to go from good to great, great to consistently great, please reach out to me either on LinkedIn. You just got to find the Ken Jacobs with some initials after his name, or KEN@jacobscomm.com, KEN@jacobscomm.com. And I just want to thank you, Trish, again for sharing so much easy to capture wisdom. And with that, we'll close as we always do by saying, keep on taking the lead.